one of the main questions that I think our audience would be curious about is that in previous interviews, you've said that you are a Zionist. And I'm wondering if that still rings true today and what that word means to you.
It means to me that Jews can have a homeland, and least of all their historical homeland. There's 55 Islamic nations. Why can't the Jews have one? And the other thing is, I look at what's happening to Jews and think, where do you want them to go? So you want to persecute them in London, you want to persecute them in Paris, you want to persecute them here, but you don't want them to have Israel. You don't want them to have a homeland. So where are they going to go? Where the hell are they going to go? And as we keep saying, as English are becoming a minority in our own country, where do you want us to go? Like, Pakistanis can go back to Pakistan. The 40,000 on terror watch list, 50% of them are on dual nationality passports. 12,000 foreign migrants in our prison system. They can go home. The 1.2 million Muslims in the UK who want Sharia law, they can go home as well. Yeah, they've got dual nationality, they can go home. Anyone who wants to overthrow democracy in this country and replace it with an Islamic supremacist ideology, same as Hamas, yeah, they can go. So obviously most people in our country, I've looked at Hamas for years. I looked at their charter. I understand the final day of judgment does not come till every Jew is dead. I try correcting people on this. I say, no, it's not about Zionism, because it says till every Jew is dead. Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, is 7% Jew hatred. The Quran is 11%. Wake up. It's got nothing to do with Israel. Yeah? Obviously, if it wasn't over land, there's still hatred of Jews. And for anyone listening on our side that doesn't understand it, it's like, look, these groups that surround Israel, they've already made it clear on October 8th. Israel's not their goal. London, New York. If you think for 1 minute that if they wipe out the state of Israel and take the Jewish women as sexual slaves like they've told them time and time again they're gonna, if they do that, you think they're stopping on the border there? Wake up. Their goal is Islamic dominance. It's a caliphate. It's not just the state of Israel. So yeah, I get frustrated with the many British who have no idea what they're talking about. I get frustrated with those who walk around flying the Palestinian flag, because the female women that are doing it, I think, yeah, you go walk through Gaza, love. See how you get on. See how you get on walking through Gaza. Yeah, because they actually despise and hate you. The majority of Gazans voted for a terrorist organisation, and the other group that comes second, another terrorist organisation. So I don't, and I give this analogy to the Brits, to the English. Just take England, and in Scotland, on our border, the Scottish people elect a government who says in their manifesto clearly to the people, the final day of judgment will not come till every English person is dead. So that's the government of Scotland on our border. And every day they just keep firing rockets at us. What would our government do? What would we be demanding our government do? Yeah, from a terrorist state that you can't negotiate with. This is not like you negotiated last time by moving. When I come to Israel, I met a Jewish girl who was forced out of Gaza with her family from her land because Israel thought they could negotiate, I don't know why, with these groups. Oh, we'll move all the Jews out of Gaza and then you'll have peace. Come on. You're never going to have peace. You're never, ever going to have peace. There's only one language. So I see Netanyahu and I see the stance of the Israeli government. And it's the only stance you can have. Because if not, you're all going to end up dead. That's it. Strength is the only language they understand. So I look at all this. I understand it. I understand jihad. I understand the ideology behind these groups. There's no negotiating with them. There's no peace. You're not going to ever have peace with these groups. So I do support freeing Gaza, but freeing them from Hamas, freeing them from Islam.
An important, I think, fact to state is that also when it comes to Fatah and Hamas and the people in Gaza, when elections did happen in Gaza, which were almost 20 years ago, there was no choice. It wasn't as if, there was, real democratic elections. Your leaders and the people who are there use violence in order to make sure that they get what they want. And that's the kind of thing that's being dealt with. I think it's important to say, I want to know what you think the solutions may be, not only just for like the Israel-Jewish problem, but what about...
It's not an Israel-Jewish problem. It's a Western world Islamic problem. It's not an Israel-Jewish problem. I understand the problem that's going on there, but that same problem is going on across the West. In every one of our countries, Germany in the last 18 months, 6 terrorist attacks by Afghanis? 6? That's not just... This problem is not an Israel-Jewish problem. That's how I see it. There's a worldwide jihad going on. Look what's happening in Nigeria right now. Look what's going on. Look what's going on across all the... What is it like for Jews or Christians in any country where they're a minority? So all the Muslims are screaming for minority rights. They want minority rights everywhere. But then they don't give any minority rights. Anywhere. There's nowhere. Not one place. In fact, there's nowhere in the history of the world in 1,400 years Islam has peacefully coexisted. It comes in as a minority, ends up becoming dominant, and then what's it like for the other minorities? It's hell. It's hell. What's it like for the Christians or Jews now, if there are any Pakistan and Afghanistan? What's it like? It's just speaking the truth. Now, I don't think we should be playing a game with our own lives. What's Israeli government's first job? It's to protect you, Israeli people. That's their job. It's not to worry about Gaza. It's not to worry about Afghanistan, same as our government. No, your job is to protect Britain and the British people. And you're failing miserably. In fact, Israel, you're doing a far better job than we are. Do you know, I come to Israel in 2016. And I went there because I talk about these issues. And if I'm going to talk about them, I need to see them and understand them. So I come to Israel. I stayed with Kay Wilson. Do you know Kay Wilson? Kay was stabbed and her friend, she was stabbed and butchered in a terrorist attack in Israel. And her friend, who was a Christian, Kay's Jewish, she was from London. And her friend, who was Christian, was murdered and hacked to death in front of her. So I stayed with Kay. Kay was my tour guide whilst I was there. I've become very good friends. But when I went there, on my trip, I paid some young Muslims. I met some young Arabs, and there were signs that said, you know, you've got the signs, do not go past here, the warning signs. I went there and thought, well, that's where I want to go. Yeah. So I paid some young Muslim lads, some young Arabs who were in Israel. I paid them. I said, I want to go to that refugee camp in Bethlehem. It was a Fatah-controlled refugee camp. So I looked it up. I thought, I want to go there and I want to spend a day there. I want to spend a day with refugees. And at the time, I've just left the English Defence League. I'm pretty prominent in my opposition to Islam. I could have got killed and probably would have got killed if they would have known who I was. Yeah. But I risked my life to go there because I wanted to hear from them. I wanted to come and visit Israel. I spent time with Jews. I went to the settlements, the disputed territories. I'd done it all. I went to Golan Heights. I travelled and I asked so many questions of everyone I met. And when I was there, I went to this refugee camp. And as I'm walking around there's videos of this. I'm walking around and he was a fourth generation Muslim refugee. And he said, do not fund Free Palestine in your country. And I was like, what? He said, none of the money goes to us. There's been 2 times more money to Palestine than to Germany after the World War. And as I'm walking around, he kept showing, so on the side of a house was a woman. I said, who's she? They're all the murals in the camp. He said, she's a martyr. She blew up the bus. She done a suicide bombing on the bus. I'm thinking, she's not a martyr, she's a terrorist, yeah? But I just carried on walking around. And I said, who's oppressing you? Who's oppressing you here? And I'm expecting him to say Israel. And I'm videoing him. And he says the Palestinian Authority. And I'm like, what do you mean the Palestinian Authority? And he said, well, and he explained to me that they pay money every month for anyone that leaves this camp and kills an Israeli. So I said then, so if someone leaves this camp, so all these murals are of people who lived on this camp, they've left the camp and they've gone and stabbed or killed a Jew. And he corrected me and said, no, an Israeli. So I said, what do you mean an Israeli? He said, doesn't matter if they're Jewish. No. I said, so you can go kill a Muslim and you still get your money? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, and then I looked up the Palestinian Authority. We fund the Palestinian Authority. British taxpayers' money funds the Palestinian Authority, which then funds mercenaries to leave camps, to murder people in order to push their political. And I'll be honest, I walked around this camp, I played football with the kids. I said, where's the park? There is no park. Where's the football pitch? There is no football pitch. Now, I have strong held beliefs massively against Hamas, against all of it. But I wanted to give those kids money. So I said, this works. This works. No wonder they keep it like this. Because they bring all the Western politicians, all the Western media, get brought to these camps like I did. They get walked through. And then they see the vulnerability of the children who are purposely held in this camp. And he said, we could all be living in villas if they stopped buying weapons. Yeah. So when I got back to Israel, I sat down with cameras on this gentleman, and I related with him, if I'm honest. I met a lot of people in my trip to Israel, but this 4th generation Muslim refugee, I really related with him. He could have picked him up. He could have been from my background in Luton. We got on really well, but he didn't know who I was. He had no idea. So when we got back to Israel, I put cameras on him in an interview and just said, can I tell you who I am? And I said, have you heard the English Defence League? He said, yes. I said, my name's Tommy Robinson. I founded that organisation. And he was shocked and he was gutted. But what he said is, he said, why? Why would you do this? I said, because I had to hear your argument. I wanted to see it from the Muslim's perspective. And as I spent my time there, as we're driving back before there, I drive past about 1,000 young Arabs camel racing. So I stopped the car and I'm wearing a T-shirt that says, I love Israel. Yeah. So I walk over and I'm videoing thinking someone's going to kick off with me. Yeah. No one batted an eyelid. No one batted an eyelid. And in the middle of these Arabs, I'm asking them all about Donald Trump, thinking that these Muslim Arabs would not like Donald Trump because he just got elected. And they said, we need strong man for America, strong man. Yeah. And everything I thought I knew. Then I'm looking and there's Jewish family wearing the kippah having a picnic next to these 1,000 young Arab men. You couldn't do that in London. You couldn't have 1,000 young Muslims with Jewish families wearing kippahs in the park because the young Muslims would turn on the Jews. So as I sat there and watched it, I thought, well, this works better than Britain as I'm looking at it. So I kept asking all of these questions. And I went onto the Golan Heights and bombs were going off. It's during the conflict with Syria. And there was a Muslim lad there and I said to him, what's it like living in Israel? What's it like for you living in Israel? He said, I pray 5 times a day. He said, I have everything I want in Israel. And he looked at me like I was an idiot. I said, okay, what about, and then he looked and he said, do you think I want to live over there? It's where the bombs are going off. So I went to Israel to learn for myself, to find out for myself, to ask lots of questions. And I did exactly that. So when I come back and I'm arguing with some left-wing clown who's been to university, who's been fed all this Pallywood nonsense, when I've done that, I sit down and ask them, well, have you actually spoke to any Muslims in Israel? Because there's millions of them, that are living quite happily. So a lot of the things I thought ended up to be different. I've gone on my own journey of journalism, of learning, of activism. But I think that the Jewish community after October 7th worldwide need to understand who their allies are. Yeah, and their allies are not Islamic organisations or groups because none of them have come out in defence. In fact, all of them have been marching on the streets calling for the destruction of Israel, the state of Israel, the only homeland the Jews have. So, yeah. And also, whilst I'm on a rant, Yisrael Shalom, I don't know if you know the death of Yisrael Shalom. Yisrael Shalom was a friend of mine. If you watch my presentation at Oxford University, Yisrael Shalom was being targeted in East London. He was facing attack and hostility. His house was continually smashed up. Swastikas were sprayed on his house. Now, I went down to see Israel. He contacted me. I went down. He was a very vulnerable man. I went down to see him. At the time, I was leading the English Defence League. I said, let me bring 50 and 100 men. Let us come to your house and wait until this happens again. But he didn't want that. He was such a peaceful man. He didn't want that. Now, in an interview I'd done with him, you can watch this in my Oxford Union presentation because I show it. He said that he believes he's going to be murdered because he has to visibly dress as a Jew. He never faced any, he was living in Newham. Do you know what the council's advice to him when he contacted about facing so much anti-Semitism? Move to a Jewish area. That was the council's advice. Move to a Jewish area. In like 2000 and what year was that? 2015 Britain, if you're facing anti-Semitism, move to a Jewish area. Imagine telling a black person you need to move to a black area. Go to Brixton, mate. Go to Brixton. No, nothing was addressed. Yisrael's now dead. Yisrael's dead, yeah? And so many, when I started looking at all of this, I looked at the Jewish lad who was kidnapped in Paris and 18 men faced prosecution. They had him for 3 weeks. They tortured him, they butchered him because he was a Jew. These are stories you think would be happening in Afghanistan. They're happening in the capitals of the most beautiful Western nations in the world that we've ever seen. So yeah, I've just gone through, I've learned a lot, I've followed a lot, and I'm outspoken on the issues, and I get a lot of criticism, but I don't really care because I understand who Hamas are, I understand what surrounds Israel, and I understand what Israel faces at the hands of these jihadists. So what is the solution? The solution is to stop bending the knee, which I'm very happy Israel's not bending the knee, but our government are bending the knee. They're bending the knee every opportunity. They're about to unholy bend the knee and recognise a Palestinian state. It's insanity. It's total cowardice. It's surrender to jihad. They've gone and murdered and raped 1,400 people, so you recognise their state. You're rewarding them. What does that tell them? It tells them you're weak. It tells them that there's a success story in murder. It tells them to do it again and again and again and push for anything else they want, going on a killing spree, and you'll get the British and the West over a barrel. And then get your people in your country, as we've seen, to kick off, which is what we're seeing. So I just feel that there's so much we could be doing. And one of the things we need to do is address the core funding of these issues in the West. Iran, why are we allowing any of these countries, Qatar, to put any money into universities? Because the problem's coming out of university, so everyone needs to understand that. The problem now, you used to send your child to university, you might be worried they get hooked on drink or drugs. Now you're worried they're going to come out jihadists. That's insane.
A recent UN resolution says that Hamas needs to be over, though. What do you think about that? Because that is sort of something like a big organization coming out and saying that they do need to disarm, they do need to not be there.
What I think about, I don't listen to what the United Nations say. I don't care what the United Nations say. Okay, so anything they say, I pay no attention to it. But they do. I agree on that point. But what they say is irrelevant because they've been weak, pathetic cowards on so many of the issues. I look around these Western nations, say like Sweden or even Ireland. I look around these countries that are supporting the Palestinian state and think, your women are being raped across your whole country by the people you've imported in. If you bring the Palestinians in, where has that worked? Where has it ever worked? Why are Egypt not letting any in? How many of Saudi Arabia let in? It's like, what? Like, they all care about them, but they don't care about them. And when you see the hypocrisy, look at all these demonstrations on the streets. Where are the demonstrations for the Christians being massacred in Nigeria? Where were the demonstrations for all the Syrians that were getting murdered in a similar fashion? It's like no Jews, no news. So many of these people, and again, I think Israel's unfortunately losing this battle. You're losing this battle. And I think the mainstream Jewish organisations in Western nations need to just buckle up, yeah, and stop being weak. Just speak it as it is.
Why do you think we're losing?
I think you're losing in the sense of propaganda. I think you're losing because people always say, well, the Jews run the world and the Jews control the media. I think we're not doing a great job at the minute because there's so much venom and hatred and a lot of it built on bullshit. Just to put it, a lot of it built on lies. Genocide. What genocide? How is this even a talking point of lead politicians? How has this got to such a vocal point when it's absolute nonsense? It's just nonsense. So I just think that when I say losing, I don't mean you're losing in the sense of the amount of hatred that's being promoted in the West against the state of Israel and against Jews. And I think that for too long, groups like the Board of Deputies in the UK have tried to play a please the Islamic community, tried to cuddle up to them. They hate them. Yeah? Stop trying. Okay? They're the ones that will be happy to see the destruction of Israel, the only Jewish homeland on the planet. So stop appeasing these people.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.